Hello, and welcome to Compound Insights, a podcast by CFA Society New York. I'm your host, Rob Rowan. Today we're speaking with Jean Natali on how to educate young people about finance. Prior to starting Troutwood, Jean spent 17 years working with the largest pension plans and institutional investors. He is also the author of The Missing Semester and spoken to in over 700 high school and college classrooms about finance. He is a CFA and holds a bachelor's degree in economics from Allegheny College, an MBA with concentration in finance from Carnegie Mellon, and he is also a board member of CFA Society Pittsburgh. Last thing, he's also a part-time lecturer at the University of Pittsburgh and an executive in residence at Penn State Barrett. So Jean, thanks for being here.
Rob, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
I am really interested in hearing what you learned during all of those 700 presentations to high schools and college that can be important to the people who are managing those people, managing the expectation of those people later, who are CFA members who run or work at registered investment advisory firms or wealth management firms.
So, Rob, let me answer that with your add-on to the question there. Let me answer that two ways. First, in those 700 talks, I have asked the same two questions to every audience. And the first is, do you have a Roth IRA? I'm always curious, just to get a pulse in the room. And I can tell you that in an average class, let's just take easy numbers. If I ask 100 students, maybe 1 to 3 raise their hand with a yes. And I immediately follow up that question with, does anyone know what the S&P 500 is? And maybe the same, 1 to 3 out of 100. And then when you ask, a smaller subset actually even is able to explain to the rest of the class. To bridge to the second part of your question, why do I ask those two questions? Pension funds are getting harder and harder to find for each graduating class. And by find, I mean enter a career where you're going to receive a pension fund as a benefit, which means that the graduating class year over year is responsible for their own financial future.
Yeah, that's the, obviously we've had this massive shift towards 401ks and self-management, but the issue is really obvious. I've almost worked at a couple of different firms that were not directly in finance and had people come up to me during the investment period and say, I picked these funds, does that seem okay? And I was like, I'll do due diligence on those. It is real tricky. So, how do you think we take those people, the 3 out of 100 who know what the S&P 500 is, to being responsible stewards of their assets?
Oh, can I transpose that question, Rob, and instead say, what do we do for the 97 who don't know?
Yes.
I think the 3 have a fighting chance. The 97 who don't know shows how important, if not imperative, it is that we have this conversation in the classroom. But also, we can take the hypothesis, what if we miss the classroom? So it falls on employers and colleges. So there's multiple angles from which to take the conversation. An emotion I didn't reference that I see often in the 97 is fear, uncertainty, and a lack of trust.
Okay, let's unpack that a little bit, because those are sort of the royal trifecta of why people don't do this. What do you reckon they're afraid of?
Well, the analogy I like to give is if you're a kid and you turn the lights off in the basement, fear, trickles in, right? It trickles in because there's an unknown, and the unknown is that which we can't see.
Okay.
I think it's that same investing. We think that Wall Street has tools that we don't, or knowledge that we don't. And the public markets are so teachable. I do teach at the University of Pittsburgh, and my students are always kind of fascinated to learn that they have access to the same information as asset managers. There isn't a secret door where the asset managers get to go in and get information that they as college students can't access. Sure, there's a path. You have to know what to look for. So fear of this arena that we're entering is, I think it's as simple as it's an unknown subject.
Okay, so that's all wrapped together. How about the mistrust part?
The mistrust is, ethics is a just giant component of the CFA curriculum, and kudos to CFAI for recognizing that. And I want to preface my answer to this question by saying there are incredible people in the finance industry. You and I both know that, incredible people. But when you get the one bad acorn, it tends to be reflective of the entire industry.
Right.
And I think that's what the average individual, looks at. They look at Just an analogy. They look at Wall Street, they look at things they don't have. They form their own conclusions with or without the media's help in many cases. So I think we have to earn trust.
Right. It's the, I spoke with someone in my old job who described it as the airline tragedy. That airlines are wildly statistically safe, but because we only see the crashes on TV and we don't see any of the ones that landed safely, creates a lot of fear.
That's an excellent analogy, Rob.
Okay. So, and how do you think that this matures through the process? So you get kids who are in high school and college. Where do you think that leaves them in when they get their first job? They got a company contribution to their 401k. What's that look like?
So confidence increases with understanding. And in place of understanding, we can put education or experiences, both of which teach us. Many of my students do bring me their benefit packages. Rob, I can tell you, and then maybe it's a reflection of me and not the companies, they are difficult to navigate.
Oh God, yes. They break them into a couple of adjectives and call it a day. It's like
it is not easy to help. I mean, we navigate because this is a 22-year-old who at least is coming and saying, "Hey, Gene, can you help with this? I've got this packet that's an inch thick, and I've got to understand
right
what to do with it." So I think that would be a challenge that I would issue to enterprises, to corporations, to employers. Help your new hires navigate this, because I see the student who's really excited about getting a job at your company, but uncertain about how to complete this benefits package they were just handed.
Right.
And Rob, what if because of that, they check I know there's changes going where now you have to physically check to opt out in many cases, not all. There's still many companies where you have to check the opt-in box to get the 401k.
Right.
These are things that we as a society, as employers, can do to better the odds of these students having trust.
Right. Yeah. It's this is one of the things I think is interesting is when in doubt, add some money to it. So not only do you not force them to opt in, but the first thing that vests is the company's contribution.
I think that's great.
That also greases a little bit, because you say to them, look, it's going to be $3,000 extra or whatever it is for free. Just take it. Now, how do you think that investment advisors of many different stripes, registered investment advisors, wealth management firms, et cetera, when they get maybe the scions of even wealthy families, or the next generation, what's a good place for them to start with a better financial acumen than the one they may have gotten in dribs and drabs from their investment advisors for their families, who are basically people with a relationship with their mom or dad?
My first part of the answer would be change the language we use. My wife's a physical therapist. When she uses words I don't understand what she's talking about. Just say knee or elbow. Then I can follow the conversation. Speaking to our finance audience, Rob, I had a professor at Carnegie Mellon who really powerfully said, powerful enough that I remember it, Gene, if the person explaining it isn't explaining it such that you understand it, raise your hand and ask. Say, I don't understand. And if on the second attempt, they still aren't communicating in a way that you don't understand it as the consumer of their information, it means they don't understand it.
Right, exactly.
And I love that challenge to that audience is, speak the language. If your clients are doctors or lawyers or mechanics or teachers, look them in the eye and talk to them. Don't talk over their head. Our industry for decades felt like we had to demonstrate the degrees and the education we have by using big words that clients didn't understand. And maybe there's even been a trickle-down effect of that, Rob, to that lack of trust. Speak in a language folks understand.
Yeah. Okay, let's shift this a little bit, because you've had many, many years of experience with pension funds and other types of asset owners, which are our general category for them. What role do you think they can play in when they talk to their beneficiaries?
I think pension funds can play just giant influence. And we have a podcast, a Traveled Watching Trees Grow podcast. We've interviewed Vince Barfield, chairman of Hawaii's pension fund. We've interviewed CIOs of these multi-billion-dollar funds, and what we do with those, push them to students.
Okay.
And students send us 3 action steps. So what can we learn from Vince Barfield, who oversees Hawaii's as a chairman of their trustees?
Yep.
20 billion. We can learn a great deal, particularly when folks in that position speak to a student audience. So one, there's lessons to learn from pension funds that were built for perpetuity.
Right.
In terms of their structure. And the structure is beautiful. IPS, I have a plan that's so important. I put a board of trustees around it. Trustees then kind of police the staff, the consultants, the investment managers to make sure they're following the rules of the plan. That's a beautiful architecture. Why do you put so many layers of protection around a plan? We're emotional human beings. Even the staff of these giant organizations, we as individuals can learn a great deal from pension. I think pension funds, we spoke with Mary Morris, CEO of Virginia's 529 plan. Virginia 529 has played a meaningful role in fostering financial education across the state of Virginia. What a great example of an institution spreading their knowledge.
Yeah, that is. There's also a massive undertaking right now to educate trustees.
Yes.
I think some of those, we've been trying to help out some of the 5 plans of New York City. In that effort too. We have an annual event for trustees just of those 5 plans. And it's just networking and education oriented. That's it.
Rob, I was a firefighter for 10 years, volunteer in Pennsylvania, which is most of our departments. I have done so much pension trustee training for fire departments where you look them in the eye and talk about, use this in those conferences. A defined benefit plan was not a beautiful, which is a pension fund, but the defined benefit plan was not designed to be your sole source of income in retirement.
Right.
So there's a great deal of education that has to happen around that so that trustees can inform their beneficiaries what they have and how it fits their broader, more holistic financial picture. I love hearing that you do that, by the way.
Yeah, it is very gratifying, particularly in New York where the trustees have a 2-year term. So by the time they figure out where the light switch is and the printer is, they're already underway. It's a real tough spot. But I guess one of the things I'm real curious about is if you were given a magic wand by some graduate school, and they said, okay, you can create a high school educational program that's an elective. It's let's call it 1 marking period long, but everybody's got to take it. What would you put in there?
So I think as a nation, we do a pretty good job of teaching budgeting, credit, the basics right now. And essentially that helps us avoid the potholes. There's a very large movement, organizations like NextGen, Foolproof, or others, WISE in New York City, great organization that's doing excellent work in the classrooms. The piece there's 2 components I think are missing. The first is transferring the education to action. Personal finance, and I'm proud of this at Pitt, my class is not for letter grade. I don't think personal finance should be for letter grade. It's pass, fail in real life.
Right.
You either get it or you don't. So I think we have to be cautious how we set up the class in terms of that. And I don't have an answer in terms of, like, for instance, I do know schools here in Pennsylvania that give extra credit or bonus for Roth IRA setup. All right. CFAI is going ding, 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 like disclosure, radar. All right, I would say CFAI, I get that, but these are kids who are in charge of their financial future. So we have got to start thinking about what follows education. I don't believe that we're going to see a resurgence of the pension fund. I think the ones that are here are pillars, but I don't see it coming back. The numbers just put around that. It's 13% according to BLS. 13% of Americans are currently participating in a pension fund. To your earlier on the 3 versus 97, immediately I look at the 87%. Say, what are their options? How do we, get them the tools and the resources they need?
So it was interesting earlier that you said that we teach budgeting and credit pretty well. I would add that outside the U.S., personal borrowing is the greatest of most of the developed world. A couple of countries are sticking out ahead of us on that. The U.S. federal government is borrowing a lot, and part of that borrowing on the part of personal borrowing is because, in part, of shortfall in the budget. So, are we teaching budgeting and credit well enough, and it's just that the wages aren't there, or what gets us to there if we're teaching that well?
Wage increase obviously did not keep up with inflation and the cost of things like college tuition for the last 30, 40 years. Maybe I'm going to push back a little here, Rob. I like to simplify complicated conversations. debt is fearful for young people. It's a legal obligation they sign at 18, not necessarily even knowing what they signed in terms of student loans. They legally can open a credit card and spend it in a weekend. If we get 4 debt choices right, they can, and this is from New York Federal Reserve Bank, our homes, our cars, our college choice, and our credit cards comprise 96% of U.S. household debt.
Right.
And the homes is the huge one of that.
Right. Homes is now 60%.
Yeah. So one, I'll share 2 for any educators listening. 2 examples we do in my class, or we pick a home in a neighborhood that my students want to live in. Then we say, find one that costs less. Same neighborhood.
Right. Right.
And study the opportunity cost of that decision. We do the same with a car, because if we, and the inspiration for that example came around a card game with a friend who had just gotten approved for a mortgage. And he was sharing that he'd been approved for a $400,000 mortgage, and that he and his wife bought a house for $399,960.
Right.
And he viewed debt not as like a way to get but like, I'm going to use every nickel of it.
Right.
And that's not how the bank was. I mean, the bank appreciates that he did that, but we have to be really cautious with those 4 decisions, because I have a personal opinion. If we get those 4 right, we can meaningfully reduce household stress in the U.S.
Right. Yeah. That I think that is exceptionally but housing. While you can find a cheaper house, housing at the end of the day is a market.
Housing is tricky, and we have a different, although it's changing, even here in Pennsylvania and in Pittsburgh, we've seen big increases in homes, which we didn't see. If I break the last 20 years into 2 decades, we didn't participate in the first run up pre-financial crisis. We have participated since, and homes in Pittsburgh have increased meaningfully, and that does price out folks. So homes is a market. We could go into a complete new episode of Wormhole now about buy versus rent and what the factors that drive that are.
I'll have you back for that one, because the long-term analysis, if you do long-term analysis on renting, it's not that much different.
Well, particularly if, you throw in a simple statistic, like I believe the number right now is fewer Americans at any point in our history can afford the down payment on a median home price.
Yes, that's true. Yep.
If I'm a 23-year-old hearing that, one, I'm terrified. And if I'm being taught that I have to buy my home, I'm now overweighting the importance of that. And I may make a financial mistake that I regret.
Right. And I do think there is something in the lore around public policy that was about, may have exaggerated the societal benefits of home ownership over time. That may have been the case. I think it's been studied. It probably needs to be studied a bit more. But that was definitely one of the things that went there. So I wonder if there are other basic lessons that you think are real important to teach people. Do you focus people on the name of this podcast is Compound Insights, because I believe in compounding so fervently.
Yeah.
So, do you teach people about compounding? I'll ask.
Oh my goodness. Well, and in 2 ways, basic compound interest, even I find compound interest hard to understand when I just see it on paper. Like, I'll just be candid. When you see the numbers, you say, this is unbelievable. And I know you and I were talking before the episode, 401k, it works. You and I have the experience. We've lived it.
Right.
It works. I look at an 18-year-old or a 22-year-old student whose maybe biggest paycheck, Rob, is $300, $400.
Right.
And they've got folks like you and I saying, look, here's compound interest. Big number.
Yeah.
How do you and I have any credibility in that conversation when they've seen $300?
Right. Yeah, it's a tough sell for sure.
But it's a sell that we've got to make. So the answer is yes, I teach it. I think a lot about it because it's an unbelievable. And when I poll students, they tend to agree that it's an unbelievable concept. And here's another. We did this in your alma mater with West Virginia University just a week ago. Model the difference in something as small as $1 a month cost between 2 mutual funds that own the exact same securities.
Yeah.
Educators and students fall out of their chair. That's the one way I've learned that's a better way to teach compound interest. Take a number they can relate to, $1 a month, which candidly they view as insignificant.
Right.
It is the opposite of insignificant. And an 18 or 22-year-old puts that dollar to work for them over the course of their entire career. Like,
right.
View it as a dividend, but in the opposite capacity, money that you would be paying for a mutual fund that is instead you're reinvesting in your own fund because you bought, take the S&P 500, there's 40 ways to buy it.
Right.
But you own the same companies and the same percentages.
Mm-hmm.
Those are ways I've learned are more relatable because they understand they can save $1. They don't necessarily believe you or I when we show them a compound equation that shows $3 million. It's just an unrelatable number.
Right. Right. Also, the math on compounding isn't real easy. Right. It's doable. It's easier to put in Excel, but it's the math on compounding is a little accessible because the formula looks like, so.
Well, think about medical procedures. We used my wife as a physical therapist as an example. What if the doctor was talking to you or I in words that we didn't understand, and then they go, "All right, fist bumps. We're gonna put you to sleep now." We're terrified.
Yeah. Well, I do have to do one advertisement for a physical therapist while we're at it, because physical therapy worked exceptionally well for me. Do the stretching, do it they tell you to do it twice a day, do it twice a day. Don't slough off on it. It works. So,
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So all right. So thank you, Gene. I would like to have you back to talk about the housing issue that we just talked about. So people, please keep your eye out. We're gonna have a fun discussion about that. So for the members who are on here, if you haven't subscribed, please do. We're available on all podcast apps. And next up, in our next episode, we're going to hear from Jody Gunsberg, who is the managing director of CoinDesk. Some of you will remember her from her time at Morgan Stanley Greystone when she spoke to CFA New York's membership a few times. So until next time, I'm Rob Rowan, and this has been Compound Insights.